Time to get underway with lecture 6. More fun stuff to talk about today. We are going to be sort of continuing our series on speeding up our workflow in any way that we can. So we're going to talk about some tools and some concepts that will help us speed up the way we do our job, because if you can do it faster, that's going to help tremendously. We are also going to delve into a couple more vocabulary things. You know, we're always trying to pile those on. And we are going to also get into materials today. We're going to talk about materials and shaders. That's how we give the surfaces of pieces of geometry their behavior with regard to light, which is how we perceive it when we see the objects or what they're made of. So we'll be getting into those things, which are kind of fun also. I think that's it we're talking about today. So let's get into that stuff before I go off on a tangent about the Infinity Stones. All right. So before we get into any Infinity Stones action, let's talk about vocabulary. Yes, vocabulary. Another fun little periwinkle vocabulary thing. Freezing transformations. Freezing transformations is, again, it's one of those house cleaning things. It's a lot like delete your history. It seems like not very important, but I can assure you it actually leads to all kinds of issues when you let this stuff pile up, kind of like history. Not quite as dangerous as history, but similar in that periodically you have to kind of freeze the transformations on your geometry and sort of clear out the channel box, all that information there that's completely unnecessary. And in some instances, it's actually quite handy. So we're going to talk about this. And again, if you take a look at your channel box, when you select a piece of geometry in object mode, you'll see that just through the process of working on it, it starts to generate transformations. You might not have even necessarily moved it, but it can do that. So something we need to do periodically is get rid of it, much like history. So I'll do both of those when I save every 15 minutes. All right. Anybody other than Daryl just sneak in? No? Oh, no, it wasn't Daryl. Just you. Okay. All right, just want to make sure I get that. You guys should come see me as soon as you come in. I know you're being quiet and not wanting to disrupt me, but we got to get the attendance thing correct. That's important. Believe it or not. It's a big deal. Yeah, the powers that be. They're very big on attendance. It's important to them because, of course, it affects your GPS standing, which employers have availability of. They can see, because pretty much if you don't make it a habit of going to class or don't make it a habit of being on time for class, they anticipate you're not going to make it a habit of being on time or at work either. So there is a direct correlation there, and they're aware of that. And I'm not giving anybody a hard time, but I'm just letting you know that's what companies look at and determine based on what they see. So you definitely want to make sure you're getting to your classes on time and not missing them, if at all possible. All right, so let's take a quick look at that freeze transformations thing. Boop. All right, so what happens is when you, let me make this a little bit smaller just so it all fits on the screen. I'm always battling resolution. Ridiculous. When you first create an object, you'll notice that in terms of the channel box, all the information is reading zeros except for scale, which is 1/1 scale or actual size. And we are at the origin. And as we move an object within the frame, we generate transformations. And this is locationally based information. Where is this thing relative to where it was previously? So something that we like to do, again, periodically, like deleting history, is we will freeze transformations on our geometry. And again, as a modeling thing, we don't really need transformations on there. However, when we start getting into animating, everything is transformations, and they're critically important. But at this stage, this is modeling, so we don't really need transformations on things typically. Now, the process for deleting or for freezing the transformations is a very simple one, but of course you have to know the steps, and this is what they are. Step 1, select the geometry in object mode. Got to be selected, got to be object mode. Then you go to modify and you choose freeze transformations. And you'll notice what happens is it zeroes out the channel box except for scale, which goes to 1/1 scale or actual size. Now, those of you who are very keen and savvy might say, well, yeah, great, you froze the transformations, but according to this, you are at the origin again, and that was the same value you had at the origin. Well, this is this object's new home position or origin. So what's really handy about this is if you're building something, I can literally take this piece and just wing it wherever I want to work on something. And then when I plug in all zeros, it doesn't go back to the origin, it goes back to where I froze it. Again, freezing kind of a bit of a misnomer in terms of its name because it's not frozen like it can't move. But if you're trying to place things in a specific location and have the object remember that spot exactly, precisely, and not have to worry about, shoot, did I put that right back where it was? Well, if you freeze its transformations prior to moving it, you can't miss. It's all zeros. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay. And again, a weird thing, when you've got a bunch of objects with transformations on them and you start grouping them or parenting them and you start to move one object, you'll see the object looks like it's kind of exploding with pieces going all over the place. And what you're having there is a situation of double transforms. I'm trying to move an object that is within the influence of another object in a hierarchy, both of which have transformational information, and it's basically using those numbers to multiply the movement. And that's why you're getting these catastrophic, like exploded views of whatever it is you're building. So in order to keep Maya on the level and understanding what you're trying to do, freezing transformations eliminates that issue, in case you've seen it already. Some of you might have, some of you not. But when weird things are happening, we want answers. All right, let's go back. So freeze transformations, again, something that we do a lot, and it's a house cleaning thing, but it's an important one. Any questions on freeze transformations? Again, not hard, but something we need to do. Particularly for your week 2 turn-in. You know I'm going to be looking for that. All right, hotkeys, hotkeys, hotkeys. Hotkeys are an amazing way to save yourself some time. You might have noticed that I don't really show you guys a lot of hotkeys in the beginning of the class, and that's because I don't want you to just use hotkeys. I want you to explore. I want you to find the menu sets and go through them and see just how many tools are available to you. Hotkeys are a great time saver, but they have a tendency to kind of blind your view. You don't see anything else. You only learn the hotkeys. So that's why I don't show them to you early. But know that they are very important to the process of speeding your workflow. And you know, they don't seem like a huge deal because it's like a little 1-2 second thing. But you know, if you save 1 second every time you do something, and you do something 10,000 times a day, that becomes substantial. Does that make sense? So it does add up over time. So it's always a great idea to try to pick up any of these things, techniques for speeding up your workflow that you can, because it will help you work faster and more efficiently. Now, in terms of hotkeys, there are a bunch of hotkeys, and there's quite a few hotkeys that have not been made yet because there are like infinite tools in Maya seemingly, but not enough keys on the keyboard, so we are limited. So Autodesk gives you a bunch of hotkeys that a lot of people use, but then they allow you to make hotkeys for things that you want to make a hotkey for. So for example, if you happen to be in Maya, well, I don't know, modeling, you'll notice that when you click on a tool or something, let me change it to Polygon so we can talk about things we've talked about. If you go to a tool, you'll see, oh, look, there's little letters and symbols and things next to some of them, and those are tools that have hotkeys. Well, what if the tool you want doesn't? Like, for example, we just talked about freeze transformations, no hotkey for that. Again, not everybody needs that. Modelers do, not necessarily anybody else. So how do I make a hotkey for something there's not a hotkey for? Using the hotkey editor, right? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna learn how to use the hotkey editor. Let's say I've got some transformations on an object, and again, I don't wanna keep going up to modify freeze transformations to find that, because that takes a long time. So what I can do is go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Hotkey Editor. And this is where I can launch the hotkey editor. And it takes a second, but it'll get there. And you'll see that there's a bunch of keys on the keyboard. The teal colored keys already have jobs and the gray ones do not. And you probably notice it looks like most of the jobs are taken, but you can do these keys in combination with shift or control or option, and you can see that actually frees up some keys for you. But let's say, for example, again, we want to do that, we want to make a hotkey for, this thing is so fussy, for freeze transformations, and there isn't one. So here's how we're going to do it. First, we're going to go to our hotkey category, and we are going to choose menu items because that's where modify freeze transformations is. So I change it to my menu items and I look for modify. And sure enough, when I get the drop down from modify, we have the freeze transformations tool, and there's not a hotkey for it. So let's say I want to, you know what, I'd like 8 to be the hotkey for freeze transformations. So I'm just going to press 8 on my keyboard. So now that one has been assigned, and then I hit save. So now that new hotkey has been created. So now I can move this object all I want, and I just press 8 and I just did freeze transformation. So now I don't have to go look for that. And you can see that is significantly faster than going all the way up to modify and freeze transformations. If you happen to want to get rid of a hotkey, again, the process is very simple. You just click the little X, the 8 returns to the unassigned, and then of course you save it. And then now if I move this object, 8 is no longer the hotkey for freeze transformations. So you can literally make hotkeys for the stuff that you do all the time, and you can build like custom hotkeys so that you actually have a bunch of stuff that helps you do your job better and faster. And that's what you always want to do. Do it faster, because they'll love you for that. That's one of their favorite things. That's awesome. Can you do it faster? Yes, I can. All right. So where did that thing go? I must have just put it back here. All right, so hotkey editor is your buddy. Another amazing thing is the hotbox. And some of you guys might have found this by accident and totally freaked out when you saw it. But what happens is when you are in Maya, if you hold down the space bar a long time, you get the hotbox. And the hotbox is basically all of your menu items at one time. And what's really cool is it appears wherever your cursor is. So you don't have to go find anything, it's right there. And if you hold it down, again, you can see, oh yeah, here's my, my modeling stuff. But you'll see, oh, wait a minute, here's my shading and lighting stuff. Here's my rigging and animation stuff. Wow, so I don't have to change my status line to whatever kind of job I'm trying to do. I can literally just hold down the space bar and get to whatever I want to. So again, the speed at which you can find the things you need to find, that's a tremendous savings there of time. So the hotbox, another amazing way to save some time.
How did you get there again?
Hold down the space bar over any window. If you hold it down, it'll pop up. And you'll see there's all kinds of menu items in there. And speaking of menu, marking menus, another amazing way to save some time. The marking menus are associated with the command in the right mouse button and the shift in the right mouse button. And again, these are just sort of secret hidden menu sets where you can hold down the right mouse button and the command key or the option key, the shift key, and you can get to things that we use all the time, like certain polygons that you want to create, or you can use, there's all kinds of tools. Let me get a piece of geometry in there, changing your selection to various things. So there's all kinds of really fun stuff that you can do using these concepts, or using these tools. And again, they make a big difference with the speed at which you can do things. So all of these things used together can definitely speed up your workflow tremendously. And I know at first they're going to seem awkward and clunky, but I do recommend very highly you try to incorporate them into the way you do things, because believe me, it will save you a ton of time in the long run. All right, does that make sense? Marking menus, very, very handy. Make sure you're playing with those. All right. Now, actually, week one, I had people asking me about this. How do I get my own image planes into Maya? Because what I want to do is find pictures of the things that I want to build and build those. Yeah, I know. It's not very exciting to build a pepper shaker and a screwdriver and things like that, but we have to start with learning those things. But I'm going to show you how to bring image planes into Maya so you can build other stuff as well. With a word of caution, make sure you're building the things you're supposed to build for me first. Then, when you've done those, completed, finished, ready to turn in, with the time you've earned, then you can build the stuff you want to build. And I recommend that very highly because you will not work harder on anything like you will work on stuff that you really want to do, and you're going to do a better job and you will learn from it even more than the stuff I give you. So practice is always a good idea. And, you know, at least 2 hours every night, you guys should be working in Maya, whether it's on the assignments that I gave you or work of your own. But that's how you get better, is that stuff that you do for you. So I recommend that highly. So what we're going to do is teach you how to bring image planes into Maya. Oh, the other question I get a lot of is can I make my own pictures and bring them in, design my own crazy creatures and vehicles and what? Heck yeah, of course. Draw that thing, make it an image, and I'll show you again the process of how to bring it in. And you can make your own stuff, which is also really, really fun. Character design is one of my favorite things, designing and creating, you know, the wackiness that goes on between my ears that you guys get little glimpses of here and there. Super fun. I really do enjoy that. So let's talk about image planes and how do I bring them into Maya, because they speed up my job and we love that. The accuracy too, they're great. All right, image planes. In terms of image planes, basically what they are is a blueprint, because that's what blueprints are. Blueprints are a 2D representation of something that will be made into a 3D object. That's from our world. Well, in Maya, it's the same idea. An image plane is a 2D representation of an object that I'm going to model into 3D. So what makes a good blueprint is actually what makes a great image plane as well. So what you want to see are nice flat side views, nice flat front views, top views. You know, as many views as you can get is great. The more images you can get, the better. Typically for modeling, though, we're going to be working with mostly fronts and sides, as you've seen from the things you've already started to build. But in a lot of instances, particularly cars and so forth, sometimes the top view really helps out a lot as well. So as many of those image planes as you can get, good idea. And even the 3/4 views, you know, again, what makes a great image plane is usually what would make a boring poster. Does that make sense? Because the images that are like 3/4 view perspective, it's like launching out at you and you're like, yeah! You know, those usually make bad image planes. But what they are very helpful for is they show you how the front and the side come together, and you get a lot of depth understanding from that. So even if you're not modeling from those images, hang on to those, because sometimes those things will answer questions that you have. Like, how the heck does this come together? I don't get it. I got the side, it looks great. I got the front, it looks great. But if I look at it in 3/4, it doesn't look like it goes together. What am I missing? And a lot of times those 3/4 views will help you see that. And honestly, nothing helps you see it like actually seeing the object. That is a huge help. I remember this one time I was building a van, and I was having a real hard time with how the front windshield area, it had a vent wing in it, how that came in with the side window. And it was freaking me out because I couldn't figure out how to get those pieces to come together properly. And I was actually driving down the road and I saw some guy parked on the side of the road with one of those vans, and I was like, wait. I stopped my car and jumped out. I'm like, can I take pictures of your van? And the guy was like, sure you can. So I got out and I'm taking pictures of just where the windshield meets up with the vent wing on the side. And he was like, you're a weird guy. Yes, duh. but I was so critical. I got those pictures because I actually figured out how those pieces came together, and I was not able to figure that out on my own. And I had collected a lot of pictures. When I decide to model something, I get as many pictures as I can, anywhere from 25, 30 pictures to upwards of 100 and something. I'll find movies of whatever it is if I can, object in motion, any kind of information visual that I can get will help me build this thing better, more accurately. And you know, typically my goal is I want to build this object so well that if the person who made the original saw mine, they'd go, wow, that's it, you did it. I want to impress them with my accuracy. So that's kind of my guiding force with the stuff that I do. But again, those image planes, they save you so much time, so it is worthwhile to find good ones. Now the tricky part is lining them up. So I'm going to show you guys how to line these image planes up properly in Maya so that you can bring your own image planes in. Now, for those of you guys who have been sort of looking around in your folders for these objects we're having you build, did you notice what folder we put the images in for you guys? Source images folder, right? Because that is the default folder in Maya that Maya goes for to find these images. So when you go to bring your image planes into Maya, you've got to put them into your source images folder so Maya knows where to look for them. Again, they can be elsewhere and you can take Maya to where they are, but it starts getting obnoxious. If you just put them in the source images folder and set your project, no problem. Every time you launch it, it's ready to go. So just as easy as your exercise files open up in class now that you guys are setting the project properly, same thing with the image planes that you put in there. So get those images into the source images folder. Now, with that in mind, what we did for you guys is I actually have images that I already put into the source images folder of your activity file folder. So all you have to do is set your project to your activity file folder, and then we'll be able to bring those images in, and you can see how they work together. All right.
Steve, are they going to have to do this for their level 3 model?
Oh, as a matter of fact, I'm so glad you asked that, Brian, because yes, indeed, do. When we get to week 3, you have to put in the image planes, because week 1 and 2 we did it for you just to make it easier for you, take a little bit off of your plate. Week 3, you are going to have to bring the image planes in. Now, yeah, you'll be all grown up at that point. The good news is we already have the images. We've already put them in the folder with the objects you're going to build. But what you're going to have to do is create a Maya project folder. You're going to have to set your project to that folder. You're going to have to take the images that we gave you, put them in the source images folder, and then open your files and get started. And there is no start file. You're the start file.
New scene.
Yes, a brand new scene. Does that make sense? And that's the way it will be from now until forever. So the training wheels will be off at that point, and you will be on your own doing that stuff, and you will have forgotten all about Brian and I. All right, so let's do that set the project thing. We do so well. File, set project, and I'm going to go to my documents folder, my 3DF folder, and set it for my activity file folder. And then now I'm going to go to file. Oh, actually, I just have to set it because right now I'm going to make a new scene and bring those image planes in. But because I set my project, it knows where to go to find pictures when I tell it, hey, I want to bring a picture in, because the first thing it's going to ask me is where, what picture, what do you want? So in terms of bringing image planes into Maya, very straightforward process. You go to your panel menu and you go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And when you click on that, if you've set your project, Maya immediately goes to your source images folder. And if you look here, you can see the path. You know, in my 3DF folder, in my activity file folder, in my source images folder, which image do you want? And then you say, well, I want my mech front view, and you open it, and then the image plane gets in there. Now, here's the very important part for you to understand about image planes. Image planes are basically an image that you trace with polygon geometry in order to build an object, and that's what adds to the speed and the accuracy with which you can build something. Now, if you've ever traced anything in your life, and you don't have to admit to it publicly, but if you've ever traced anything in your life, what you know is that you have to kind of tape something down so it doesn't shift, because it's very hard to trace it. Not that I know that, other people have told me. I've never done that in my life. But you have to tape it down so it doesn't shift, right? So when you look at my image plane here, you can see it would be really hard to line up this geometry with this picture. And that's because when you bring an image plane into Maya, it literally attaches it to the camera that you brought it into. So if I've got a camera that can look anywhere, the picture is going to go anywhere. So it's effectively not nailed down. Does that make sense? So what I want to do is you don't bring your image planes into your perspective view typically. What you want to do is utilize your orthographic views. So if I've got a front view picture, I bring it into my front view camera. So again, the steps are panel menu view, image plane, import image. Maya says, which one do you want? I want my mech front picture, open. All right, now that the picture is in here, it's time for me to position it. And this is very important because it's going to affect my modeling. So this thick black line down the middle of the camera view here represents the center of the world that I'm building, the very center. This flat black line that goes horizontally represents the surface of the world that I'm building. It's actually this grid right here. So what I want to do is I want to move my image plane so that my object is actually resting right on the surface. And if I build all of my objects this way, everything will be in the right position in space. Does that make sense? I don't have to adjust it later. I can import stuff and they're already where they're supposed to be. So, you know, make sure you got that all lined up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and look and see, oh yeah, my toes aren't touching the ground. So I need to scoot those down. Scoot it up just a smidge. I need to scoot it up just a little bit more. I'm going to let me see if I could just plug in a that's close. There we go. All right. So I've got my object lined up to where my toes are kind of on the edge of the ground there. And then the next thing I want to make sure that I'm doing is I want to try to center the object as well. So in terms of centering it, I'm just going to look for, you know, an area that represents a detail or something that's in the center of the object. And again, most objects exhibit some form of bilateral symmetry. So all you have to do is kind of shift it a little bit and try to find the middle of something. Again, I'm using this circle as my middle. And I want to place the object in the center like that. And then when you come to your perspective view, you'll see it there resting and ready to go. And now I'm ready for my side view image. So again, that's going to go into my side view camera. Makes sense. View, image plane, import image, and then I'm going to my mech side and bring that in. And again, same idea. I want my toes to be kind of just touching the ground. And although this does not exhibit symmetry front to back, what I'm going to do is kind of try to divide its mass in half, more or less, in terms of its placement. And then of the utmost importance, I need to adjust things in my perspective view to make sure that things are crisscrossing properly. So for example, if I look here, here's the top of my mech in my front view, but here's the top of my mech in my side view. So then what I have to do is ask myself, well, do I need to bring this image down so that these two lines crisscross perfectly? Or if in bringing it down, did I push my toes through the floor? And you see they're kind of a little bit down below that black line that represents the surface. So it may be a situation where rather than moving the object up or down, maybe I need to scale the image a little bit and just make it a tiny bit bigger to make it fit. Or maybe I need to make it a little bit smaller and move it down. And what you want to do is try to get things to line up to where Again, the details of one image flow right into the details of the other. So for example, here's the top of the mech here, here's the top of the mech there. Great. Another good thing, this right here is this detail right here. So what I'm going to do is scoot this thing back and see if those things line up. And it looks like they're lining up pretty well. So that looks like pretty good placement. Let me double check my toes and make sure. No, it looks a little high. I might have to make that thing a tiny bit bigger. And then bring it down a little bit. Let's see how it's lining up. All right, that's looking better. So once the toes are on the ground, and again, that's a good point for you to figure out, where your starting place is. If everything's touching the ground like it should be, then proportion and scale come from that. Does that make sense? And I know it takes a long time and you're going, wow, that's tedious. I really have to do that. Trust me on this one. It is well worth your time to spend your time to get those image planes to line up as neatly as you possibly can. Because if you don't, what happens is you end up modeling and you're modeling, and you get to a point where you're like, shoot, these don't come together at all. And that's because those proportions are off. Does that make sense? That is the worst time to figure out things are not lining up well, because then you got to start again, and that stinks. So take your time, do a good job of lining up those image planes, and it will pay off later on when you're able to model very quickly and very accurately. So don't be afraid of a little bit of work up front. Yes? What's that? Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to find that. So again, get those things lined up. Now, once you've got it all lined up and it's looking like, woohoo, yeah. Incidentally, this is a Lego robot. I don't know if you guys noticed that, this mech. It's a Lego thing. Yeah, very cool. So feel free to build it if you want. It is not either. I'd rather you did it in Maya, but I'm not going to make you. And it's not a level 1, level 2, or level 3 asset, so that'd be something you do for fun. But once you get those image planes in there, now we got to start thinking about, okay, now I'm going to be starting to model. So if I, create a piece of polygon geometry, you'll notice that, oh yeah, these pictures, I mean, they're great. They help me model, but they're kind of in my way. So here's what I do. After they crisscross and they're looking fabulous, then what I do is I grab these image planes and I literally move them off of the grid and out of the way so that I can model here in the middle. Now you might be wondering, will that not mess up my proportions and all that stuff that I fought so hard? No, watch this. I'm going to grab my side view image. Here's my side view right here, right? So watch this image as I move this image off the grid. Did it change size here? No. Here's my front view image. Again, here's the front view here. Watch as I push it off the grid. Did it change size here? No. That's because something getting smaller as it goes away from you is a function of perspective. Those are not windows with perspective. Those are orthographic views. There is no depth. Does that make sense? That's why things look like cubes there, or squares. They're not cubes. So I can move those image planes out of the way, and it's not going to change the proportion and scale that I have worked so hard at maintaining. So I can move those images out of the way. And which direction do I move them? If you move them one direction, you will notice that the image plane is in front of the grid and I can't see the grid. I like to move it so that the image plane is behind the grid, and you just have to move it to one side to see, oh, it's the other one. I like to have the grid on top of the image. That's a personal preference of mine, but it doesn't make a difference. So I'm just going to move those image planes out of the way. And then, to be honest with you, you don't really use your image planes in the perspective view at all for the most part. We model in our orthographics. So then what I'll do is I'll go to my show menu and I will uncheck image planes. And they're not in there at all. I can't see them. They don't get in the way. But I still have them where I need them because these guys have their own show menu. Make sense? Get a hell yeah? Okay, good. So then you can, save your file and then model away like crazy. Alrighty. Any questions about image planes, their importation and or use? Because you're going to have to do it week 3. Yes.
Question online is how can we lock image planes so they don't move? Can we make a reference on the display?
That's a good question. There's a number of ways you can do that. Probably based on what you already know how to do. You could make a layer and put it on the layer. You guys remember layer creation? Yeah, make a layer, put those image planes on the layer, and you can work the visibility button with that. And then we also have on the layers for various things, the ability to lock and template these things. So for example, let's say, for example, I wanted to create a layer for my thingy here. Where did my layer editor go? I know, but I'm like, come on. Give me a... Yeah, I tried doing that. It won't let me do it. It won't let me go either direction. I'm gonna have to play with the thing again and then switch it back. I have to say, not a fan of the resolution issues that we've been having. All right. So let's get into here. Let's say now I want to make a layer for these image planes. I can go to my layer editor, which I'm hoping is under here somewhere. There we go. Nice to see you. Create an empty layer. So I've got this layer. Select my image planes. And incidentally, sometimes it's tricky to grab them. So what I'll do is I'll just do a marquee selection of a corner, and that seems to work. Très bien. And that's German for very well. I'm going to grab those guys. Come on, you. All right. I'm going to put it on that layer. And then we've got this visibility thing. Oh, you know what I did? I grabbed a cube. Add that object. Add that object. Okay, so I got my visibility going. And one of the other fun things we could do is we can click with this button over here on the right, the far right, which is regular layer, templated layer. That's what the T stands for. And if you click it one more time, you're in a reference layer, and references cannot be touched. So it's effectively making it so that you can't grab that thing. So if you want to do that, you can do that also. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Who was that? Seth Gomez. You rock. Aren't you guys glad he asked that? That's why I say ask questions, please. Everybody wins when you do. All right, so planes. Anything else? Pictures that have two sides? Oh, you mean if like the front view and the side view? Well, here's the funny thing about image planes. You can literally take the same picture and bring it into 12 different cameras. So you could bring in, if you had a blueprint that had the front and side view of a car on it, for example, you could bring that image plane into the front view and line up the front view. Then take that same image plane and bring it into the side view, but use the side view part of the picture to line up with the front view part of the picture from the other view. Does that make sense? So you could do that. You could also, if you wanted to, bring it into Photoshop and cut it out. You could also, if you wanted to, do screenshots of it and then, utilize those. There's a number of, interesting duct tape and bubblegum operations that you can do in order to make that happen. And I recommend trying them all, see what works for you. But the key is keep thinking. Your brain is your most powerful tool, so use that thing. It's the only thing they can't take away from you. And if they do, you don't care anyway, apparently. So hang on to it. All right, let's get into the next fun thing. I got to change the resolution back to something you can actually see my menu sets on. Do you remember which one of these it was on? Can you guys, in the back row, can you guys read the top row of menu items? Okay. Okay, it must be this one then. Yeah, I'm sorry. We've had weird resolution issues in a couple of rooms, and this is one of them. It makes me double plus unhappy. All right. Image planes, they're magical. All right, time to talk about materials. Now, in terms of materials, typically when we think of materials, we think of their physical properties. We think of wood, metal, plastic. How do they behave when we're making stuff out of them? That's how we think of materials for the most part. In Maya, objects don't really have physicality unless we assign dynamics to them and that kind of thing. So for Maya, the way Maya thinks of materials is how do they react towards light? Are they shiny? Are they very shiny, a little bit shiny? Are they dull? Are they transparent? Are they translucent? How deep does the light penetrate into a surface? What color is that surface? Does that carry light and color information from the object to other objects? There's all kinds of things that we're asking Maya to figure out for us, and they relate to how does light react to the surface? Because we've pretty much figured out a mathematical formula or algorithm for the behavior of light, so we can kind of replicate it in this artificial world that we're building. And so what we're going to do is talk about how do we create materials in Maya and assign them to objects so that we can make things different colors. Because right now, everything in Maya is gray, which is super boring. So how do we make things different colors? Well, that's by creating new materials and coloring those materials. Very important for you to understand, though, this is not texturing. We're not texturing. This is just changing the colors of materials and assigning it to objects. Does that make sense? Texturing is a whole other animal. We are going to talk about that, but not today. So, baby steps. First, we start with materials. Now, in terms of materials, they all live in a special window in Maya called the hypershade. Shade being the giveaway, the name. And the hypershade is where we house all of the materials for any given scene that we're working on. You'll notice, as I said before, that everything is this dull gray material. Well, this gray material is, it's called Lambert, and that's the name of it. And it's meant to represent a dry, chalky material, not very light reflective. I mean, light does bounce off of it, but there's no highlights or anything from that. Great examples of Lambert-like behavior are like sidewalks, the acoustic tile on the ceiling, rugs. Those are kind of Lambert-like with regard to how they react to light. So within the hypershade, when we first open it, you'll see that there's 3 materials in there, and one is Lambert number 1, or the default material that everything is made of in Maya until we create a new material. So let's go in there and take a look at how this stuff works. All right, so I'm going to make a new scene here. We don't need any of that. Again, to get to the materials, we go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. And when we open up the Hypershade, you'll see there's all kinds of fun stuff in here. Another window that is in like catastrophically large proportions for some reason. Every time I open Maya, something funny is going on. Again, here is the browser, as it is termed, and you'll see there's Lambert number 1. That's the default material in Maya. Everything is made of that when we first make it. We have a particle shader and a shader glow shader. These are the default materials. We do not mess with these. Does that make sense? No touchy. Bad things happen to good people when they mess with these. But the good news is we can make new materials, as many as we want, and those we can play with all day long. So they're down here in the create section. And incidentally, if you open your hypershade and yours looks different, panic ye not. The hypershade sometimes opens up with different configurations, but all the windows you need are in the hypershade itself. All you have to do is go to Window, and you'll see there's a list of possible windows in here. So if your hypershade's completely blank, or you have some of the windows that I have and not other ones, that's okay. So let's say, for example, I wanted the outliner to be in my hypershade. It's not, I don't really need it, but let's just pretend that's what I want. If I go to Window, you will see, oh yeah, there's the outliner right there. So I click on outliner and it gives me a floating outliner window. Now, well, that happened way too fast. Let me get that back out of there. You know, when you want it to happen, it doesn't happen. When you do want it to happen, all right. So here's the outliner. And the way it works is if you grab the floating window by its bridge, as it were, or spine, you just drag it around in Maya and you'll see Maya will actually open up and make a little space for it. And all you have to do is get it near there and let go, and it'll actually put it in there, except when I want it to. There it goes, now it's in there. So now the window is in there. And if you don't want a window, you either click the little X here to get rid of it, or it'll have a little tab that you can grab and yank and that'll pull it out. But you can rebuild your Hypershade to have any windows you want. For this class, all we need is the browser and the create tabs, really. The other ones are not that important. So as long as you got those two, you're gonna be golden. Yes? Well, if Maya should happen to explode, and then next time you launch it, it comes back speaking another language, you'll know, don't do that again. Like I said, you don't want to touch these, you don't want to delete them, you don't want to mess with them. So if I were you, I'd close Maya, don't save anything, and open it again. And next time, don't touch the things I say don't touch. It just works better. No touchy those. All right, so in terms of making a new material, couldn't be easier. To make a new material, again, all you have to do is go to the create section here and pick the material you want. In this class, we really only work with Lamberts, so you'll just make another Lambert. Just click on the word Lambert and it will make another one. And then all you have to do is open up your attribute editor, which might be a tab over here on the side, or you can click on this icon here, which looks like sort of 3 screwdrivers on top of each other. And you'll see, oh yeah, here's Lambert number 2. Again, it's a machine, so it calls things, whatever the next thing in the sequence is. And here's where you'll name your material. And right after you make a material, you want to name it. So I'm going to call this my blue material. All right. Now, you'll notice right away, well, yeah, you called it your blue material, but the sample says it's not blue. Well, here's where I make the adjustment to make it the color I want. If you look down here, you'll see, oh, I've got a whole bunch of attributes for this material. And attributes are kind of like qualities. Like you might say, somebody's tall, somebody's short, somebody has blonde hair, somebody has brown hair. These are attributes of a person. Well, materials have attributes also. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the color channel, because color determines what color things are. And you'll notice that it's got this sort of gray swatch, and that's its base color. If you click on that with the left mouse button, it opens up the color history. And in here, you can actually choose a color or make adjustments down here to whatever color you want. So, you can pick, whatever color of the rainbow you want, add some tinting to it, and again, light or dark. And basically what we're looking at here is a scale of HSV, or hue, saturation, and value. And if you know specific numbers, you can literally plug those in to get a specific color. Otherwise you can explore using these bands to find the color you want, or this really groovy color chooser over here, which allows you to pick, color, whatever color you want on the wheel from the outside, and then add your tinting and your saturation in through there. So it's really whichever one you want, and it'll actually make up a sort of a history of colors for you up there that you can specify, shades of white, that kind of thing. And you can change it to RGB if you wish as well. So whatever color scale you want to work with. So now I've got this material. It's blue in color, and I named it blue material. And now you can see in the Hypershade it is in fact blue. Yay. So now all we have to do is color an object. So let's say I have this cube. Right now it's gray because it's made of this material, Lambert number 1. But I want it to be blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this material to that object. There's a bunch of ways I can do that. The easiest is just hold down your middle mouse button, which gives you the green plus of power. you might remember from last lecture, and just drag it over to the object and let go. Now it's made of this material. And what's cool about that is I can make as many objects as I want, and I can apply that same material to it, and they will all be that color blue. Now the downside of that is all of those objects are made of the same material. Therefore, if I make an adjustment to that color, it will, except on my copy of Maya, it will adjust all of the objects with that same color. So if I need different shades of blue, what I'm going to have to do is make another material and then find another color blue and then apply different materials to different objects so that they're different colors. Does that make sense? Think of the materials kind of like crayons. You got to make the colors you want. But this isn't just a 64-pack, baby. This is all the colors. So the best crayon kit ever. Now, something to bear in mind is I'm applying material by object in this instance. The entire object is made of this material. But I'm not limited to that. I can actually change the color of individual parts of the object because I can say some parts of this object are made of one material and other parts of this object are made of another material. So for example, if I wanted this face of this cube to be the dark blue color, I could hold down the right mouse button and choose face mode and select specifically the face that I want to be dark blue. And then in the hypershade over the material I want to assign, hold down the right mouse button and choose assign material to selection. And this will literally assign this material to just that face. So, and ultimately, I can assign colors to different faces. So really the only thing that is dictating where colors go is the edge flow of your geometry. So if you wanted to, you could literally create the shapes you want on the surface of the geometry and then color just those faces the colors you wanted it to be, and you can add multiple colors within the same piece of geometry. And the way I like to kind of bring that back to our world, think of geometry as like a stained glass window, you know, and the edge looping, the edge looping of the geometry is kind of like the leading. So you can put different colored pieces of glass on the same window by putting different colored glass into each little area that's sectioned off by that metal part that goes between the pieces, right? Let me see. You know, if you look at a stained glass window, the different colors are separated by the leading material in there. So if, you know, wherever your edge looping is, you can color inside those faces whatever you want. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I would like for you guys to do, we're going to do a quick test and see how you guys are doing with this, is, oh, wait. Let me show you your exercise slide. Boop. What I want you to do is we're going to create a couple of pieces of geometry, polygon geometry, and color them just so you can see how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sphere and a cube and how about a cone? All right. And what I'm going to do is assign colors to these objects. And you can assign whatever you like there. And I'm going to change part of my object into one of the colors. And I'd like you can use any colors you want and any shapes you want. I just want to see that you can assign a material to an entire object as well as a face or faces for design reasons. Look, it's almost a Pokeball. You're from Miami, right? There you go. It's an 8-bit Pokeball. All right, let's see you guys assign some colors to some geometry. Let's see how that goes. Again, it's not a complicated process, but it's definitely a more interesting way of coloring your geometry pretty quickly. And it's something that I will do while I am modeling to kind of make my models more fun to look at while I'm modeling them. Because looking at dull gray all the time is definitely boring. So it's kind of fun when you can add color to pieces, make them look a little bit more like what they're supposed to be before you go down the road of texturing, UV mapping and texturing. So very handy. You go to the Hypershade and create a new material. Window, rendering editor. Yep. And then you want to make a new material in there and color it up. Oh, nice. That's very colorful. Good, good. Yay, good for you. Yes, please. It is very much like working in Photoshop, where if you don't name the layers as you go, before you know it, you have 100 layers. You don't know what's on any one layer, and it's really confusing. And you spend more time figuring out what's on each layer. You have to create a new material. Window, rendering editors, Hypershade, which is where you are, and in the create section, create a new Lambert material. Good job. Good job. How's it going? Good? There you go. Good. Cool. All right. Now, something you may have noticed when you're looking at some of these materials and their attributes, one of the things that's on there is transparency. And you might be wondering, ooh, does that mean make things see-through? Yeah, for shizzle. Watch this. You can adjust the transparency, and you got a little sample here that shows you what it's doing. And you can kind of slide this thing along, and you can go through, you know, how transparent do I want to make it? Like glass, or basically invisible, or, you know, where do I want to be? And you can adjust that material to where it's like Jello, and you can see through it. There's always room for Jello. All right, I got a cube inside there. Here we go. Absolutely. There was a cube I was not aware of. But, you know, like I said, it's pretty fun when you can color your geometry, because it actually makes it more interesting what you're working on, because it gets boring just looking at that gray all the time. So I'll try to color things somewhat. It just makes it more fun for me as the modeler when I can do that. So the Hypershade is super fun. All right. Any question about the creation of materials? When you select the material in the Hypershade, if you double click on it, it will load it in the attribute editor. And then you can change the name of the material there, which I recommend very highly. Oh, while I'm talking about the attribute editor, this is a pretty important thing. You will notice that within the Hypershade, there is a window called the Material Viewer. And you'll see that it kind of has the attributes of the material in there as well. I have noticed that sometimes when I'm using the attributes in the Material Viewer, that's when Maya shuts down for no reason. And I don't understand why. But it does not shut down when I use the attribute editor. Again, this icon on the main interface. So yes, it's true. There are attributes in the Material Viewer, and it looks just like the attribute editor in terms of the information. Sometimes when I'm playing with this one, it freaks out and causes Maya to crash. And, you know, this is kind of weird. I just changed this material to pink and it's not showing up over there, but there we go. Yeah, weird stuff happening. But point being, you got to, in my opinion, it's not been proven otherwise, but the material viewer I have seen cause problems. So I tend to not use that one because I don't trust it, the property editor. I don't trust it as implicitly as I do the attribute editor. So, but that's your call. You can do what you want. But I have noticed a much higher success rate with the attribute editor over the viewer editor, or the attribute editor in the Hypershade. All righty. Whoa. And that window likes to pop up a lot. Yeah, well, it happens. All right. So actually, believe it or not, that brings us to our skill check for today. I knew you'd be excited. And the skill check, we're going to color the zombie kill bus. Yeah, so not only have we rigged it, now we're going to color it. Now, something to bear in mind is, since you select objects to apply color to them when you're coloring them, probably a good idea to open up your zombie kill bus before you set up your hierarchy, color it, and then if you want to, you can put the hierarchy back on it, or you can disassemble the hierarchy you have in place, color it, and then put your hierarchy back together. I'm not looking for both in the same file, if that makes sense. This is lecture 6. So with your lecture 6 turn in, I'm just looking at the colors on your bus, and lecture 5's turn in is the hierarchy. So I want to see the hierarchy in that. It's doesn't have to be the same file. Does that make sense? You don't have to have hierarchy. So, and the cool part is we're actually going to post on FSO the images of your zombie kill bus. Other people can see what you've done, and you guys can see each other's work. Yes?
Can we color the bus any color we want?
Any color you want. It is entirely up to you. The assignment is wide open. I'm going to show you some examples of some previous classes and what they've done, and they've had a great time with it. I got to show you. This is one of the class's favorite assignments typically, because it is wide open and you can do whatever you want. And again, I just want to see that you can color the zombie kill bus different colors. And you can see this one's pretty cool. The zombie love bus.
I like how they just put like everything everywhere.
Yeah, no, random is very funny. That's another great one. And again, it's just a function of moving vertices or using the multi-cut tool to create the shapes you need and then add the colors where you want them. And that's a pretty fun one that we got. That's a great one. I typically don't recommend too much modeling. I'd rather you just kind of colored things, but that was too cute. I had to put that up there. Yeah, isn't that great? But again, I recommend you guys have a good time with that assignment. Have fun with it. Do something that's interesting to you. Again, it's going to turn out better the more fun that you have. And we will be posting it for our week 3 discussion. So you can put that thing up there and, you know, see your classmates and give them some feedback on it and get some feedback on yours. And the reason I have you guys post that is because you really kind of have to get in the habit of putting your work out on the web for people to see. And I know at this stage you're like, well, I'm kind of brand new and I don't want to show anybody my stuff because I'm terrified that they're going to like make fun of me and give me a wedgie and take my lunch money. But that's not going to happen because number one, we start you guys posting on little discussions like FSO. And then you'll notice that also on FSO, there was that thing, Join Full Sails 3D Community. You guys remember you did that as one of your activities? Hopefully you did it and didn't just check it off and say you did it, because you're going to be using that in other classes. and you're literally going to start posting your work there. And again, the good news is that's part of Full Sail's interior. So you're only going to get feedback and comments from other students who are at this school. So again, you're going to start to learn how to get feedbacks and critiques, how to make adjustments based on those feedbacks and critiques, and learn how to grow as an artist. Because one of the most important things you need to learn as an artist in this kind of field is the fact that you are going to be told to do things a specific way, and your response should be, yes, boss. There's no debating. There's no arguing. Even if your boss is wrong, you just go, yes, boss, and you make the change that they want, even if you know in your heart of hearts it's wrong, because they are the lead on whatever project you are working on, or they are the client who's paying you. So you don't have an opinion unless they ask you for it. Does that make sense? So you really, no, I'm not, I appreciate it. I'm not your boss. No, not yet. It's, well, you never know. You know, heck, I could be working for you. But the point being, it's not a debate. Again, time is money. You are given specific instructions you have to follow to the letter if you are a value employee. And they want to know that you can take a critique and make the adjustments they want. They're not trying to hurt your feelings, but they are paying you so they don't have to be careful. Does that make sense? So when you're getting a critique, anything that they don't mention is great and they love it. So if you're looking for accolades and hugs and stuff, it's not going to go that way. They're going to tell you what's wrong, and they're not going to cut any corners or try to sugarcoat it or make you feel fuzzy. They're going to be like, this stinks, change it. I hate this, change it. This is a problem, this is not going to work, fix it. And they might not use as gentle language as I am, because they don't have time. They've got deadlines they've got to meet. They are under too much pressure and they have too much to do also. Does that make sense? So learning to kind of grow a thick skin, learning how to get feedback from people and make adjustments accordingly. That's a huge part of being an artist for hire. And that's the kind of job you're trying to get into right now, artist for hire, which means you do your best and you're doing it for you and you're doing it for the money. But realize that it's not, the artwork you do for hire isn't always the stuff that makes you feel great about being an artist. Sometimes you gotta eat. Sometimes the work you're doing makes you feel great about being an artist. And hopefully that happens more often than not. But realize that it is a job and you gotta do what your boss wants. Then that's just a reality of most creative fields that you get paid for. But what I like to think of it as is I work for someone else, do what they want, try to make them happy to the best of my ability, and then with the time I've earned, I do the stuff that makes me happy. I do the artwork that I enjoy, because that's really what makes you want to keep doing it, is the stuff you do for you, because that's very gratifying, because you can do it the way you want to do it, with the timeline you want, your specifications and details, which is very liberating. It builds you up as an artist. You feel great about that kind of work. On the downside, without somebody standing over you with a whip, sometimes that stuff doesn't get done because you can just noodle with stuff forever. Although I don't often quote other people, a great line I heard, George Lucas said, artwork is never truly finished, only abandoned. And I agree with that, because there's a point where you're like, I've had it with this. I don't even care if it's not done. It's done now. And that happens. But that's when you're doing stuff for yourself. When you're doing stuff for someone else, they'll be like, that's good enough, and they yank it right out of your hands and it's done. So you got to make sure you're doing what they need you to do. Up to that point, they take it from you. Does that make sense? Again, so that learning to be critiqued, that learning to get feedback without it hurting your feelings or feeling like you have to defend yourself and go after somebody else. What do you mean? Or that just doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, okay, I see that. I can make that change. No problem. Does that make sense? Hell yeah? Okay. So again, we warm you up to it. You know, we do discussions. So it's really just your classmates giving you feedback. Then we go to just Full Sail's giving you feedback. And then by the time you get out of here, then it's the universe is giving you feedback. And by that point, hopefully you're dealing with it better. more able to understand where people are coming from. Okie dokie? Cool, good. All right, so I have actually, we kind of went through that sort of faster than we typically do. That's all the stuff that I want to talk about today. Aside from, turn-ins looked pretty good. I was looking at the turn-ins and the grades across the boards, and it seems like overall things look pretty good. I would say probably the things that people missed the most would be some people did not create layers for their objects. And remember, you got to have a layer for each object you build. One object could be made of 30 pieces. That doesn't matter. You need one layer for each whole object. So make sure those are on there. The other thing that I saw that people were doing, number of pieces. Quite a few people missed number of pieces. Well, not quite a few, some, if they missed anything. Making sure that objects are made of the correct or close to the number of pieces it should be made of. Again, look for materials, look for pieces that move, pieces that can be animated. That's a good hint. And of course, we made you that document, the parts guideline. That document tells you this object should be made of roughly this number of pieces. So that'll help you figure it out too. So make sure you do that. And I had a few models that people lost form points on for not making them hollow. If you've got a bottle, there should be an opening or at least a suggestion of an opening there. But for the most part, I didn't really see anything crazy wonky. Most people did fairly well. So this was a good turn-in. We will see. They get harder. Did I show you guys my roller coaster example? All right. How many of you guys have been on a roller coaster before? Okay, good. So the beginning of the roller coaster is the really fun part, the anticipation and excitement. That's week one. We're going up, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be so much fun. And then week two is, we go into that part. And then we get into week three. Oh, help me, oh God, you hold me, somebody. And then week four. So be prepared. It starts out not too bad, and it gets out of control, like on a flammable level, very quickly shortly thereafter. So stay on top of your assignments. Start working early as you can. They're getting harder. Week two, we're doing level 2 and level 1 assets. You're going to do 5 of them, not just 3. Not everything is a cylinder. Cylinders are pretty easy adjustment, so you kind of skirted through week 1. Okay, good for you. Week 2, a lot fewer of those opportunities. You can't build the same objects again. They got to be new objects, different objects. They're going to be harder, a little bit more complicated, i.e. time consuming. So be prepared. These will take longer for you to build than week 1. Does that make sense? Stay on it, get on it early, and show your work often. The smartest thing you can do is say, hey, I think I'm done with this. What do you think? Whether you're in the Google Hangout or in the lab with Marcus and Sarah, or in the Google Hangout with Marcus and Sarah, or Brian. Hey, I'm thinking of turning this in. What do you think? I think this asset is done. Great. Here's all of my assets in my final scene. I'm thinking about dropping this in the thing. What do you think? Hey, don't forget this and this. Very few classes will allow you to show your work to the instructor before you turn it in. We do that. That's fine. Bring it to us. We're more than happy to take a look at it and tell you what you need to do to get a better grade.
I'll give you all the answers.
All of them. We don't hide anything.
Yep.
It's not deception. Yep. You got a self-grade document, tell you what we're looking for, and you've got us anytime you want to show the work. So make sure you're showing it to somebody. Again, you got to get used to this. This is the way this goes. This line of work is you can't be fragile. You gotta be tough. So get used to getting some feedback. It's okay. You're a beginner. We know you're a beginner. It's all right. By the end of the time you're here at Full Sail, that's when I'm going to be expecting the greatest models I've ever seen in my life. This week, not so much. So don't worry. Okay? So take advantage of the help. That's why it's there. Don't be shy. I know that's the hard part. It's going to be okay. All righty?
All right.
Cool. All right, so today is Friday, so I will see you guys again on Monday. And what will we be talking about then? Oh, Booleans. Ugh. The dreaded Booleans. All right. When we get together on Monday, what I'm going to be talking about are some really cool and interesting tools that you can sort of add to your accessory pack of tools that you already know how to do. Very important for you to realize, though, these tools do not replace insert edge loop, extrude, or multi-cut. They're just fun little tools that do some interesting things in very specific situations. They work out well. Specialty tools. You are still going to be using multi-cut, insert edge loop, and extrude for 90% of the work you do. These are just things that you can add to your little repertoire here and there for specialty stuff. And you'll appreciate what they can do for you because they're pretty cool. But modeling is modeling. And you can take what I taught you in class number 3 and build anything under the sun. So keep working, get that stuff done. That's why I say start early. You can do it already. You've had week 3 lecture, you're ready. Go. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You learn a lot from the stuff you get wrong. You could be modeling something for a couple of hours. You're like, oh, this is terrible. Start it again. No big deal. But it'll take me 3 hours to get here again. No, it won't. It will take you an hour and a half at most. Maybe even just an hour. Each time you start something, it takes less time to get to the same point. And I'll let you in on a little secret. That 3 hours that you needed to screw up, you needed that 3 hours anyway. So whether you did that on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you still have to do that learning period to get to the good modeling you can do. Does that make sense? So there's no wasted time at the machine. No wasted time. If you are working on Maya, you are making progress. Even if it's going backwards a little bit, that's fine. You will go forwards again eventually, so don't give up. Keep trying. Do not be afraid of doing something again. That is actually sometimes the best thing you can do. Okie doke? Cool. All right, well, I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you very much. And don't forget to go to lab.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Am I checking on one of the assets I made?
Yeah,
So for one of them, I chose the gumball machine.
a very hard one.
So yeah, this is this is what I started with. It's hollow, of course.
Yep, no, very good.
This is the front of the machine. These two are the same thing.
Now, 2 things that you have to do. Number 1, this piece right here is made of 2 pieces, but it's not the plate and this round part. It's literally 2 halves of the same thing.
Oh, right.
This plate is